So what's in a brand name? If you buy cheap stuff, you don't expect it to last because it's not good quality. But when you do buy a good brand of anything, you expect it to be better in every single way. But is that a guarantee, or is it just a way for companies to raise the price of an item and then raise the price for the parts you'll need in the future to keep it going? Do I have a point, or am I reading too much in what brands stand for? In today's video, we're going to look at this John Deere lawnmower, and the problem is that it's a theft recovery, and while it was away on its vacation, it was badly mistreated and needs some major attention. Now, I've already made a video about this mower, and if you want to see that video, there should be a link to it at the top of the screen or at the end of the video. And I'm just going to use the video as a background while I talk about how I see companies trying to brand their products and how it impacts me and, of course, other consumers. So right now, when you think of John Deere, what comes to mind? For me, it's their riding mowers, but for some, it might be their large farm tractors. Either way, the branding makes me think about hard-working farmers or a homeowner taking care of their land surrounded by a white fence on the plains of mid-America. But is that what you picture? Now, no matter what you picture in your mind, the branding should be very strong, although recently their reputation for their large farm vehicles has taken quite the hit because of software blocking for independent repair companies. It still appears that their overall reputation is still intact, but we're not here to talk about that particular issue. In fact, we're not going to only focus on John Deere, but also mention other companies that have tried to rebrand themselves in the last decade, typically with some success. So going back to this John Deere mower, I'm not sure if this particular design was made for other brands or if it's a unique mowing deck only made for John Deere. Someone who has more experience or knowledge can chime in if they want to, but as far as I can tell, it appears to be an updated version than made from the older 14 SE models, which used to be gray in color. Now, to highlight the branding, they accentuated the change by painting the newer ones John Deere green with John Deere yellow wheels and lettering. Now, this color scheme worked well to let you know exactly what you were getting, a John Deere. So am I saying a snazzy paint job is enough to establish your brand? Well, I think it helps, but once consumers buy your products, hopefully they'll speak for themselves. Now, you don't need to be the best at what you do, and the reason is because that may not be what your brand stands for. I know that sounds kind of silly. I mean, wouldn't you want to be known for great durability and excellent value? Only if that's what you're looking to do. But what if that's not what you're going for? What other possible type of branding or image would you want? I think this is the part that most consumers sometimes forget about. They can't all aim for the #1 spot, and if they did, they'd have to increase their quality of their own products to compete with the other brands that are already at the top. So what if you aimed just a little bit lower instead? But why would you want to make it subpar or just average? The reason is quite simple: money. So let's take Poulan for example. I see their branding as affordable and somewhat capable, at least that's how I see them, no matter what they were actually aiming for. And this is when I'm going to introduce the idea of perspective. So even though I see Poulan that way, other consumers may not. In fact, some see them as one of the worst brands on the market, but why? Did they have a bad experience with the brand in the past and that's why they don't care for them? Not necessarily. What sometimes happens is that consumers will hear about horror stories about certain brands that may or may not be true. Now, regardless if it's factual, some consumers will take it as gospel and vow never to use that brand despite never having used it in the first place. Now, is that fair to Poulan as a brand? Of course not, but it happens, and it's not just to Poulan, but it sometimes happens to the top brands, which I think is kind of strange. So here's a situation for you to consider. I heard from a friend that their steel trimmer was an awesome machine and should be experienced, so that's what I did. The problem was that I didn't have the same experience they did with it. In fact, it was kind of horrible. Yes, it was powerful and built extremely well, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't for me. So what do you think I did after that? Do you think I told everyone I could that steel trimmers are horrible and should be avoided at all cost? Nope, not at all. In fact, I told other people what I just told you, that it was very powerful and well built, but it simply wasn't meant for me. However, I could have easily described it in a different way which would not have been favorable for steel. There's just one issue with this whole story. Just because I described it the way I did, it doesn't mean you heard it that way. In fact, you may have heard something much worse. Now, it's only human nature to sometimes embellish the truth or even bend your perception of reality, but you could have easily taken what I said and paraphrased it as steel trimmers are not as good as they seem, and therefore their quality has also gone downhill as well. I know that might seem a bit of a stretch, but most of the same keywords are there. They've just been rearranged and garnished with some embellishment. Maybe because it was heard wrong by the other person, but even in writing, consumers will read into it what they want. So taking a stab at Poland might seem like I'm going for low-hanging fruit, so this time we'll use a different brand instead. Let's try using Craftsman this time. Now, what do you think of when I say Craftsman? Do you think of Sears or do you think of hand tools? Unfortunately, this example gets pretty hairy with Sears' financial struggles, but all I want you to take from it is that Craftsman's reputation has been greatly affected by everything that's happened to Sears. So I have to ask yet again, what do you think of when I say the word Craftsman? Of course, since I can't hear what your answer is, I'll give you what my answer is. The word lost comes to mind. So what do I mean when I say lost? Simply put, since they've been jumbled around by all the mergers and acquisitions, I think they've lost their direction. Now, I used to think they were a great brand back in the day, but with all the issues with Sears, I don't feel as though they could make good equipment while going through bankruptcy. Now, if you're curious, Sears stores are still around, but in limited numbers as opposed to 2 decades ago. So, do you think I'm going to go out and buy a Craftsman branded machine feeling the way I do about them? Do I really need to answer this question? So if a brand's perception is that powerful, how come Craftsman stuff is still being made? That's an easy one to answer. There are plenty of consumers out there who don't share my view of the Craftsman brand. Let me reiterate, I have nothing against Craftsman as a brand. In fact, I really like their tools. However, I just choose to buy a different brand over theirs. So what brand of lawn equipment do I prefer then? Well, I'm not really sure how that's important to the overall story, but I'll put it in a way that works with how branding works. So if I was a staunch Chevy person because I believe their vehicles are fantastic and they started making lawn equipment, then I'd buy Chevy branded equipment no matter if they had bad reviews for their new products. The same would apply if I was a die-hard Ford person as well. Simply put, there's nothing wrong with brand loyalty because you're already set in your way and there's literally nothing that can change your mind. Now, if you've seen my past videos, you'll know that I really like Honda mowers, not because I like Honda vehicles. In fact, the only reason is because I like the way it cuts my grass. That's it. As for trimmers, I prefer to buy Echo. However, I don't even use one personally. I actually have a Featherlight that I enjoy using, and my choice in blowers is whichever one I haven't sold yet, which at the moment is a Makita 4Cycle. So for me, brand loyalty is not really an issue, and it all goes back to money. The issue is I do not like buying new equipment. I've only done it on rare occasions, but it hasn't happened for a very long time. And even though I prefer Honda mowers, I doubt I'd ever buy a new one. And since I keep finding them for free, I really don't have to worry about it. I prefer Echo trimmers, and even though they are very affordable, I can still find them being given away, so I doubt I'm going to buy a new one. I just find it difficult to spend hundreds of dollars on new stuff when I keep finding used items for free. So what is my brand of choice? Apparently, whatever's free. Now, you can prefer anything you want, but in the end, can you afford it? And the answer for me is I don't want to afford it, which would probably look pretty good on a t-shirt. So even though I prefer Honda mowers, what's my view on the brand? Strangely enough, it's not all that good. Despite how much I like the way it cuts, I think they're too expensive. And even though I think they're worth it, I don't think they should be as expensive as they are. They're just mowers, not jewelry. So what about the Echo brand? How do I feel about them? Well, I feel as though they are a great value and you can't go wrong with them. I would recommend them to anyone looking for a good trimmer. Who knows, one day I might finally break down and actually buy one. Until then, I'll just look at them or just wait to buy a used one. So what's all this about then? Well, one of the things I always find amazing is the variety of brands that I pick up for free while using a free website where people just give them away. Of course, most don't run, but sometimes you get lucky and get stuff that just requires fresh fuel, and that's it. In fact, the last mower I saw being given away had no issues with it. They were just giving it away simply because they bought a new one and didn't want an extra mower hanging around. And the mower I picked up before that was a Troy-built mower with absolutely zero extras with it, which means it didn't have self-propel or a bag. It was just a simple mower that didn't start after its winter storage. Now, I would have liked to have known why they chose this brand, but when it's free, I don't stop to talk to people. I just pick it up, wave to the camera in the window, and then drive off. There simply isn't a reason to bother them. So I've already mentioned how I felt about mowers, blowers, and trimmers, but what about something a bit bigger? What about riding mowers? Now, I've already made a video about the fun and excitement involved when getting and using a riding mower, but what brand of rider would I get? Well, as long as I wasn't committed to buying one, I'd like to buy a new John Deere, but why? The answer to that question is really simple. It's not brand loyalty, it's experience. So I've had several riding mowers in the last decade I've been doing this hobby. The first one I got was an older Craftsman from a coworker. Nothing against Craftsman, but this one was old and very worn out, and it had its issues, but I didn't hold it against the brand since I bought it used and worn out. After that, I had a Troy-built, a Murray, a Cub Cadet, a Sentinel, and a couple of John Deeres, and from all these, I felt that John Deere was the best. So did the John Deeres make the most power? No, they didn't. Were they the fastest? No, they weren't. Then they must have been trouble-free. I wish I could say no to that one too, but sadly they all had issues I had to fix to get them working again. So if they weren't great at anything, why do I like them so much? Well, I perceive their brand as a long-lived company known for, you guessed it, making good quality riding mowers, and from my experience of working on them, I liked what I saw. Now, does that mean they are without faults? No. In fact, they have a few annoying issues that I can't stand, but in the end, I can live with them. So yet again, I didn't pick them because they're perfect. So if I feel that way about them, would I pick them for a zero turn? Unfortunately, I can't answer that one with certainty because I've only worked on a handful of zero turns. And if I had to pick one, I would choose a Toro only because, yet again, through experience, I liked what I saw when I came across a Toro. Now, to be honest though, I like to think the John Deere Zero Turn would be pretty awesome too, but I can't say that with certainty either. My advice would be to buy whatever brand you like and stick with it until you find a reason to move away from that brand. And to me, I think that's the only job a manufacturer like John Deere has to struggle with, which is trying not to lose customers when you introduce new changes to your products. The reason is you can't make everyone happy. So my question is, does a company's branding mean anything to you? Basically, I'm asking, does it matter if the reputation of a brand of equipment has any effect on you choosing that brand? I'd like to say no, but after this long discussion, it's very apparent that branding does have an effect on me, and if I don't like it, there's a good chance I'm not going to pay any money for it. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.